She crept home after a one-night fling, but the hallway light exposed a nightmare she never imagined. The door clicked open at exactly 2:46 a.m. I remember the time because I had been staring at the clock for almost an hour without blinking. The hallway was dark, but I could hear her breathing. Not that soft, sleepy kind of breath either. It was quick, clipped, almost calculating. Jessica always did think she was clever. She didn't know I was still up. That much was clear. Her hand fumbled for the wall like she'd done it 1,000 times before, and then light. Her pupils shrank as she looked up and saw me, sitting at the kitchen table. I wasn't dramatic about it. No candlelight or staged evidence. Just me, her husband of 7 years, holding the cup she gave me for our 3rd anniversary. It said, "World's most patient man." It never felt more like a joke than it did in that moment. Jessica froze. Her left heel was still dangling from her index finger. She had taken off her earrings, but not the necklace. Gold. The same one I hadn't seen in over a year. I never asked why she stopped wearing it. I assumed it was out of fashion. But tonight she wore it like armor. Her dress had a stain on the hem. I could see it from where I sat. A smear of lipstick not hers was pressed into her collarbone. You had to look closely, but I knew it didn't belong to her. Jessica didn't wear coral. She stared at me for a few seconds, eyes glassy and slow, like she was trying to load a script she hadn't used in a while. I didn't speak. I wanted her to say something first. "What are you doing up?" she asked. Her tone had the same tired frustration someone uses when their coffee maker breaks. Not shock, not shame. That's when I knew. I stood up. Not fast. I didn't want her to think this was a scene. No yelling. No slamming fists. I walked past her toward the foyer. There, sitting on the entryway bench, was the box I had packed 3 days ago. Not for me. For her. Inside were receipts, printouts, chat logs, a red lacy bra that didn't belong to her, a motel room keycard from a place we never stayed in. I had laid it all out like evidence at a trial, but I wasn't the one making a case. I had already sentenced her. Tonight was just delivery. She didn't look at the box. She didn't ask what it was. She just sniffed and walked to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, unscrewed the cap. "You're being dramatic, Daniel." I blinked once. She took a sip, and then looked at me as if she expected me to hand her a towel and ask her how her night was. "You came home at 3 in the morning, with your dress twisted backward," I said. "Do you want to keep lying? Or should I go ahead and call Marcus?" Her eyes twitched, a flinch tiny but real. "Marcus?" she asked too quickly. "Seriously? You think I'm what? Hooking up with your friend now?" "My best friend," I corrected. She laughed, short and sharp. "That's paranoid as hell," she said, still chuckling. "God, you've always been like this. So insecure. It's pathetic." That's when I walked past her again and dropped her phone on the counter. Open screen. Messages displayed. Marcus's name at the top. That was the first time all night she looked scared. But not for the reason I expected. Not fear of hurting me. Fear of getting caught. Fear of the consequences. And then, something strange happened. She smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a regretful one. A slow, bitter curl of the lip, like she was enjoying this. "You really dug deep for that, huh?" she whispered. "What now? You going to cry? Want me to beg?" There are words for people like her, but I'll use the ones that matter. Cold, detached, merciless. The hallway light behind her flickered, and for a second, she looked like a stranger wearing my wife's face. I didn't know it yet, but this was only the first fracture. There were more, and they were going to hit a lot harder. She didn't move from the kitchen, just stood there with the fridge humming behind her, bottle of water sweating in her hand, and that same smug expression carved into her face like she knew something I didn't. I didn't speak right away. I didn't trust myself to. My heart wasn't racing, it had slowed down, like my body had already moved past panic and found the cold waters beneath. It's strange, the way betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just settles like a fog in your bones. Jessica glanced at the phone again. The screen had gone dark, but she knew what I saw. The messages with Marcus weren't vague or coded. There were dates, times, phrases burned into my memory like acid. I can't stop thinking about the way you kissed me in the back seat. He's clueless, Soel. I wish it was you waking up next to me. That last one gutted me. Not because of what it said, but because it had been sent at 6:42 a.m. while I was making her eggs. What do you want me to say? She asked finally, her voice flat. I raised my eyes. I want the truth. Jessica scoffed, took another sip and leaned against the counter like we were chatting over morning coffee. The truth is you're boring, Daniel. You've been boring for years. You think just because you're not a jerk that you're a good husband. You go to work, you come home, you walk the dogs. You've been walking through this marriage like it's a job with a punch card. Her words didn't land like punches. They didn't have to. They slid in under the skin, slow and deliberate. I took a step toward her. Not close, just enough to speak without raising my voice. And that makes it okay? To sneak around behind my back with him? With someone I trusted? She tilted her head, smirked. I didn't sneak. You just didn't look. That stung more than it should have. I turned away, gripping the edge of the sink just to ground myself. My hands were shaking now. Not with anger or frustration. I kept thinking about all the times I'd made excuses for her. Covered for her with friends. Defended her to my mother when she made those offhand remarks. All of it. A man slowly painting over cracks in a wall he didn't want to admit was already collapsing. She spoke again, voice softer now. Calculated. You're not going to leave me, Daniel. Let's not play pretend. You don't have the guts. I turned back to face her. My voice came out low. Try me. Her jaw clenched for the first time. That smugness twitched just for a second. But it was there. The moment she realized something had changed. I walked past her again toward the bedroom. She didn't follow. Probably thought it was some dramatic act that I'd come back with teary eyes and a plea to work it out. But I didn't pack a bag. I grabbed the manila envelope from the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside, printouts of bank transactions. A spare key to Marcus's apartment. A photo I didn't take, someone had sent it to me, anonymous number. Jessica's car parked outside that apartment on a Wednesday afternoon. She'd said she was at a dentist's conference in Albany. I returned to the kitchen and placed the envelope in front of her. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. Her smile finally cracked. I've got more than messages, Jess. Silence. It was the first time she didn't have a comeback. I didn't say anything else. I just walked past her, opened the front door, and stepped out into the night. The air was thick, humid, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The door shut behind me with a dull finality, but it wasn't peace that followed me out into the dark. It was silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring, your mind churn, your chest throb in a rhythm you can't quite name. I didn't drive anywhere. I sat in the car, keys in hand, engine off, staring out the windshield like the glass could tell me what to do next. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. But I didn't feel calm either. It was something worse, clarity. I replayed the look on her face over and over. That smile. That flicker of something cruel under the surface. That wasn't the woman I married. That wasn't the same girl who used to write me dumb little notes on the backs of receipts. This thing between us had rotted and somehow she'd gotten comfortable living in the smell. The text messages were the spark, but the fire had started long before that. I opened my glove box and pulled out the burner phone. I bought it 2 weeks ago, right after the first message I saw on her smartwatch, one she forgot to take off before a shower. She didn't even know it lit up when it got notifications. Rookie move. Since then, I've been collecting. Watching. I didn't tell anyone. Not my brothers, not my coworkers, not even my therapist. Just me and this stupid plastic device buzzing with screenshots, photos, logs, backup passwords. I dialed the last number on the burner's call log. It rang twice. Yeah? The voice was male, rough, annoyed. Greg? It's me. Daniel. You said if I ever needed confirmation. Pause. You got it. I swallowed. I got everything. Greg was an old friend. PI work. He owed me a favor after I helped cover a DUI he didn't want on the books years ago. I never thought I'd cash it in. But when I suspected something deeper than just a fling, I reached out. You want it in writing? Audio? Video? I got a clip, he said. It's short, but enough. Hotel room. Room 213. Midtown Motor Inn. I nearly choked. That was where Jessica claimed she went once a month for self-care spa weekends. I had even paid for a couple of them. You sure it's them? Daniel, he said flatly. She kissed him in the parking lot. Right on the camera. Broad daylight. It's them. I closed my eyes. Okay. Send it. When I hung up, I didn't go back inside. I didn't even look at the house. I just drove. No destination. Just moving. I passed gas stations, bars, churches, all of it blurred behind the tears I didn't want but couldn't stop. Not sobbing, just leaking, like my body was trying to drain out the trust it had stored up for years. She had been with Marcus. My friend. My best man at the wedding. The one who helped me pick the damn ring. The one who told me, laughing, that Jessica was a real one. I guess they laughed about that together now. The worst part? I started second-guessing myself. Like maybe I drove her away. Maybe I didn't do enough. Maybe I made it too easy for her to lie. Maybe she was right, I had gotten too predictable, too careful. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about boredom. This was about character. Or the lack of it. I pulled over at a 24-hour diner. Sat inside for an hour. Didn't eat. Just watched couples come and go. Some arguing, some laughing. All of them with no idea how quickly it can all collapse. How sometimes the person you sleep beside can slowly start to disappear behind the face they wear for you. When I finally drove back, it was dawn. I didn't go inside. I stood on the porch for a long while, staring at the front door like it was the entrance to someone else's life. And in a way, it was. Because whoever Daniel was before last night, he was gone. Dawn's pale light filtered through the curtains when I finally pushed the front door open. The house smelled the same coffee, faint vanilla from her candles, but it was hollow. Like a stage set waiting for actors who'd already quit the play. Jessica was on the couch, scrolling on her phone. She looked up when I stepped in, eyes sharp and calculating. No apologies. No remorse. Just that same tired expression like I was interrupting her morning routine. "You're home early," she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. I didn't answer. I walked past her, toward the kitchen where I poured myself a glass of water because nothing about today felt like coffee. She followed. "So, what now?" she asked, arms crossed. "You got your proof. You've played detective. What's next, Daniel? You want me to grovel? Beg? Cry on your shoulder?" I looked at her, really looked, and saw someone I didn't recognize. Someone cold, bitter, almost amused by the chaos she'd created. "I'm not here for a show," I said. "I'm here because I gestured between us, this isn't working." Jessica laughed, a low, harsh sound. "Not working," she repeated. "You think you're the victim here? You think I'm the one who messed this up?" I blinked. "Who else then? Me, the boring husband? The invisible man who stopped noticing you?" She stepped closer, eyes flashing. "You stopped living, Daniel. You stopped trying. And don't give me that I was working excuse. You made yourself invisible and I found someone who actually sees me." I wanted to scream, to shake her until she understood what she'd done, but I didn't. I just swallowed the lump in my throat and said, "So that's it? You're done?" She shrugged like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Yeah, I'm done. And you know what? I'm not sorry." The words hit me like a punch. The kind that leaves you gasping for air because you didn't see it coming. "You're not sorry?" "Nope. Not one bit." She turned and walked away, leaving the house feeling emptier than ever. I sat down at the kitchen table, head in my hands, realizing this wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was a battle for my dignity. And I was losing. The days that followed were a blur of cold silences and harsh words. Jessica didn't try to hide her contempt anymore. It was there in every glance, every sarcastic comment, every deliberate step around me, as if I was a ghost haunting her space. I started sleeping on the couch, not because I wanted to leave the bed she claimed, but because the emptiness between us was so thick it smothered the room. Every night, I'd stare at the ceiling, tracing the cracks that had been forming beneath us for years, wondering when exactly the foundation had given way. She was ruthless. The last vestiges of kindness buried under layers of bitterness and lies. One evening, I tried to talk, to find any flicker of the woman I loved beneath the mess. "Jessica," I said, voice shaking, "why did you do this?" "Why am?" Her eyes flashed, and she spat back, "Because you made me want to disappear, Daniel. You didn't see me anymore, so I found someone who did." I wanted to argue. To tell her that I had tried, that I stayed late at work to provide, that I planned trips, birthdays, weekends. But the truth was staring me down. I hadn't seen her, not really. I'd been there, but absent. And maybe, just maybe, she had been right. Yet, the way she threw it in my face with such venom turned my gut cold. "I deserve better," she snapped. "And don't pretend you're some saint here. You made your bed." She was cruel. Bitchy. Scornful. And she loved that power. But beneath it all, there was this unbearable sadness. Like watching a fire you once built burning down the house you shared. I didn't know if I could forgive her. If I could forgive myself. But I knew one thing, I couldn't stay like this. Not with her venom poisoning every moment. So I started thinking, what comes next? Fighting for a marriage that felt more like a battlefield? Or walking away before it broke me completely? The weight of decision pressed down on me like a storm cloud refusing to break. I was caught in this relentless tug-of-war between what I wanted and what was left. Jessica didn't make it easy. Every time I tried to sit her down, talk about where we stood, she'd mock me, biting, sarcastic, twisting my words like a blade. "You want to save this?" she sneered one night. "You're delusional." One night, after a particularly brutal exchange, she tossed her phone on the table, eyes blazing. "Here," she said. "If you want proof, have fun scrolling. I don't care anymore." I stared at the screen, heart breaking all over again at the endless stream of messages, selfies, laughter I wasn't part of. That's when I knew this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was her world now. I felt anger, sure, but beneath that, something deeper, exhaustion. A hollow, gnawing tiredness that settled into my bones. I reached out to my therapist for the first time in years, not to patch things up, but to find clarity. She asked what I wanted. I couldn't answer. Did I want to fight for us? Or did I want to let go? I didn't know. Days passed, each heavier than the last. I sat in the silence of our living room, surrounded by the trappings of a life that felt like someone else's dream. Jessica packed a bag one afternoon. I watched her without emotion. "Going somewhere?" I asked. "Maybe," she said, eyes cold. "Far enough." No goodbyes, no tears, just the snap of the door closing behind her. And in that moment, I realized, maybe this was the only way forward. Maybe some things aren't meant to be saved. But letting go? That was going to hurt more than anything. The house felt impossibly empty without her. Not because I missed Jessica, the woman she had become, but because it was the first time I realized just how much she had taken with her. Her scent lingered faintly on the pillow, a cruel reminder of the nights I thought we were still together. The clothes she left behind looked strange, like relics from a life that had already slipped through my fingers. I tried to focus on work, friends, the dogs, anything to fill the void, but every quiet moment dragged me deeper. Loneliness wasn't the soft kind you read about. It was jagged, sharp, a gnawing ache that made every breath feel heavy. Then came the calls. Not from Jessica. No apologies. No regrets. Just Marcus. His voice was smooth, almost too calm, like he was calling to check in on a job well done. "I know you saw everything," he said once. "Look, Daniel, maybe this isn't how you imagined things, but Jessica's happier now. You should think about moving on." I wanted to shout, to slam the phone down, but I didn't. I just hung up and stared at the ceiling, wondering when my best friend had turned into a stranger. The betrayal didn't stop at Jessica. It spread, poisoning the edges of my life I thought were safe. At work, I was distracted. My boss pulled me aside. "You okay, Dan? You've been off lately." I smiled and shook my head. "Just personal stuff." The truth was, my whole world had collapsed, and no one could patch it back together. I started going to therapy more regularly, desperate to find some footing. My therapist asked me to write down what I wanted. Not what I should want or what others expected. Just what I wanted. It was the hardest question I'd ever faced. Because the answer wasn't simple. I wanted to feel whole again. I wanted to trust. I wanted to believe in love. But mostly I wanted peace. And peace seemed like a distant dream. The nights grew longer and colder. I found myself wandering the empty rooms, tracing the outlines of memories like shadows on the wall. Every photo, every keepsake was a silent accusation. A reminder of what once was and what had been shattered. Jessica's absence became a loud presence. One evening, a text lit up my phone. No name, no number saved. Just a message. "You lost her, Daniel. Don't pretend otherwise." I didn't respond, but the message hit like a punch to the gut. Who was this? A friend? A stranger? Someone sent by Jessica to torment me? I blocked the number and tried to move on. But then Jessica showed up. Not at the door. Not with apologies or explanations. She stood across the street watching. Our eyes met through the window for a long moment. No words. Just the cold recognition that something between us was dead. I wondered if she felt the weight too. The crushing finality of a love turned poison. I didn't call the police or confront her. I just watched until she disappeared into the night. That night, I realized some wounds don't heal with time. They fester in silence, waiting to reopen when you least expect it. And no matter what I did, I couldn't escape the past, not when it followed me like a shadow. I tried to rebuild. Not the marriage god, no, but myself. Like piecing together a broken vase, holding the fragments carefully, hoping the cracks would become part of the design instead of the destruction. I started running again, forcing my legs to carry me farther than my mind wanted to go. I cleaned out the house, her clothes, her things, photos from vacations that now felt like another lifetime. Every item tossed felt like a step away from the wreckage she left behind. But the hardest part wasn't the physical clearing. It was the mental unraveling. The questions that spun endlessly. How did I miss the signs? How could someone I trusted so completely become a stranger overnight? Was I enough? Was I too much? Could I have saved this? One afternoon, I met up with an old friend, Sarah. She listened without judgment, no quick fixes or platitudes. Just quiet understanding. For the first time in months, I talked without stopping. I don't know if I can ever trust again, I confessed. She nodded. Trust isn't given. It's earned. And sometimes it takes time to learn how to give it to yourself, too. Her words stuck with me. That night, I stared at the ceiling again, but something inside me shifted. Not a miracle cure or an instant fix. Just a flicker of hope. Maybe I thought the pieces could be put back together. Not the same vase. Not the perfect one. But something new. Stronger. Realer. And this time built on truth, not lies. Weeks turned into months. The sharp edges of betrayal dulled, but they never fully disappeared. Some nights, the loneliness pressed in so hard I thought I'd crack. Other days, I caught myself smiling at a memory or the way the dogs chased each other in the yard and felt a flicker of something I thought was lost. Jessica tried to reach out once. A text. A call. I ignored both. I wasn't ready to reopen old wounds, and honestly, I didn't want to know if her apologies were real or just another lie. Instead, I focused on me. Therapy, running, reconnecting with friends I'd pushed aside. I started small projects around the house, planted a garden in the backyard. Things that needed care and time, just like me. One afternoon, I found an old photo of us. Smiling. Before the cracks. Before the lies. I stared at it for a long time. Then carefully, I slid it into a box labeled Old Life. I closed the box with a quiet resolve. I'm not the man I was before this all started. Nor am I the broken version Jessica tried to leave behind. I'm somewhere in between. And that's okay. Because this experience taught me something no betrayal ever could. Some people don't deserve your loyalty, but you owe yourself the grace to heal. If you're reading this, stuck in the chaos of someone else's lies, know this, you're stronger than you think. The pain is real, the scars will stay, but your future? That's still yours. Don't let anyone steal that from you. And as for me? I'm still learning to trust, still figuring out what love really means. But now I'm doing it on my terms. The phone buzzed again, another message from an unknown number. I debated ignoring it, but something made me open it. You think you won, Daniel? This isn't over. I stared at the screen, cold dread creeping in. It wasn't Jessica's style to threaten, this was something darker. Someone else stepping into the chaos. The next days were filled with subtle reminders, a note slipped under the door, a scratched tire, shadows lurking near the house when I got home late. I called the police. They said they'd keep an eye out but warned me these things are hard to prove without concrete evidence. Jessica denied any involvement when I confronted her on a rare phone call. You're paranoid, she said, voice icy. Move on. But the feeling of being watched gnawed at me. I tightened my circle, kept friends close, installed security cameras. One night, reviewing footage, I caught a figure standing outside the driveway watching. The silhouette was familiar, someone I never expected to see again. Marcus. The betrayal had evolved from a painful chapter into a haunting saga. It wasn't just about a cheating wife anymore. It was about reclaiming my peace from the shadows that lingered. And I realized healing wasn't linear. Sometimes the past reaches out to remind you it's still there. But I also knew I wasn't the same man who once let betrayal define him. This time, I was ready to fight for myself. It all came crashing down one night, faster and darker than I ever imagined. Marcus showed up at my door. Not with apologies or excuses. Just cold eyes and a smirk that dared me to respond. I didn't say a word. Didn't flinch. I knew the man standing before me wasn't the friend I once trusted, it was the architect of the nightmare Jessica had dragged me into. The confrontation wasn't loud or dramatic. No fists or shouting. Just a silent reckoning between two men whose lives had been twisted together by betrayal. I wanted to make sure you knew, Marcus said quietly, that she never loved you, that you were just her safety net. His words stung, but the real pain wasn't in his insult. It was in the truth behind it. Jessica had used me, lied to me, treated me like garbage. She was the last bitch anyone deserved in their life. Her lies, her disrespect, her complete disregard for what we built together. She showed her true colors when the light was on. But standing there, I realized something important. I was done being her victim. I closed the door in Marcus's face and locked it twice. That night, I sat alone in the quiet, the weight of months settling around me like dust. But beneath it all, there was peace. I had survived the storm she brought. I had faced the worst betrayal and come out standing. And I knew this. Some endings hurt like hell, but they make space for new beginnings. Jessica was gone, but I was still here. Stronger, wiser, and finally free. If you're stuck in a hell like I was, believe me, there's a way out. It's messy. It's painful. But it's possible. You just have to hold on long enough to see the light. And when you do, don't look back.